Everything that you could ever need to know about the show, it's in the show notes. Everything that you could ever need to know about the show, it's in the show notes. So go on over to grimerica.ca or grimerica.com.
The repressed sexual forces are needed to be liberated in order for mankind to transform itself and to be able to master the powers unlocked by the atom bomb.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Peter Gray from 50 Shades of Grey. I was looking at the picture of 50 Shades of Graham over there.
Mr. Dunlop will see you now, that picture.
It's actually Peter Gray from Scarlet Imprint, the company that published Gordon White's book.
Yep.
Starships, which is the book. I guess, so Gordon's publicist, whoever that publicist is, must be the first person to ever get us in touch with Gordon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know. I thought maybe we got through to Gordon through Greg? THC, yeah.
Could have been.
Because that's when I started listening to Gordon was after. You know what's funny is I was listening to Rune Soup a long time ago now. I remember back being in the sauna in the gym listening to him.
Singing?
No, listening to Gordon White. Gordon.
Well, you were just before we started recording, you were telling me how good of a singer you are.
No, I didn't say that.
You said certain songs.
I said certain songs, like certain 80s songs and stuff, you know, like some
like Stairway to Heaven,
Skid Row or Motley Crue or like
18 in Life.
No, not that one. No.
Which one?
What's the other one they sing?
I don't know.
See, I don't know. I have to look it up on my phone now.
The only Skid Row song I know is 18 in Life.
Maybe I'm not thinking. Maybe I'm not thinking Skid Row.
But I could get like
Okay, let me look at my 80s super power ballads playlist.
Maybe I could find too bad that 80s stuff wasn't at a copyright. Maybe I can find a copyright friendly version of Stairway to Heaven and you can regale us with that.
Yeah. A what version?
I don't know, something.
I remember you. That song. It's the ballads.
Yeah, that one. I don't know. I just made that
It wouldn't be hard, right? I remember you.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, that's good. Or like Home Sweet Home from Crew, and then there's that Scorpions one, like Still Loving You from Scorpions, and like some of those old like.
We sing at CAC?
I don't think so, dude. I can't do it in front of people. I got to be alone in the car.
We'll put blindfold you on.
Sometimes I start to get like upset. You know,
cry while you sing. Just crying all the time. If you want to skip,
I'm grieving the loss of freedom for the youth of our times.
Who lost the freedom now?
Because we had so much freedom. I was grieving the loss of freedom for listening to the songs that we used to go, you know, clubbing to or whatever, or like out, or just driving around as kids to the beach or whatever as teenagers. You know, it's like I don't know.
I was in the bush all weekend, so I seen plenty of freedom.
There you go.
Kids
How was
running
it?
Around, swimming.
That's good.
Beaching. Yeah.
Awesome.
Taught Madison how to drive the boat.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, you'd never know anything was going on in the bush. Like 2 hours from here, you'd never know.
No.
It's a different world. They had a playground in the middle of this one.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So the kids were on the playground a lot?
Oh.
Yeah, it was good. Must have been hot out there, though, eh? But
no,
you swim in the lake? What was the lake? What was the lake called?
I'm not gonna
say.
I'm not gonna say on the show. I don't want to. I only got so many good spots.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll keep that secret. Keep your little secret spot there.
Well, I don't need any little unofficial meetups when I'm on a camping trip either. But it's a good spot. We go there sometime, but I don't think you're much of a camper.
What do you mean? I used to go camping all the time. I mean, as kids, like 1,000 trails. We used to go 1,000 trails all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like your dad was doing a lot of the work.
What?
Well, I mean, the only time I've known you to go camping, you didn't leave the tent.
What are you talking about? When I went on my own?
Yeah.
I went camping on my own.
Yeah. And then when you lent me your tent, it had cat pee on it, and it seemed like you didn't know because it had been in storage for a long time. I don't think you're much of a camper. Well, maybe
What do
I'm
you
wrong.
mean I didn't leave the
Prove me
tent?
wrong.
It's because there was something walking around in the middle of the night and I didn't get out and leave my tent? That's what you mean?
Yes.
Well, would you?
Yes.
You just get out and see what kind of creature is walking around your tent in the
Yes.
middle of the night, in the dark.
Yes.
Well,
You could have at least open the window.
No, I mean, then you're, no, I was just fucking playing dead.
It's just like
Playing dead, yeah.
It's like a fucking clubhouse rap. Playing dead. You get drug out of the tent by your feet. Well, maybe we'll go camping one day. See
Yeah,
what
I
you
used to like it a lot.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's quiet out there. No cell service.
That's
You
good.
notice that shit
Yeah.
when you're out of cell service
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
I turned on the 5G on my phone.
You turn it on?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I had it off. I had it on LTE only.
Oh, I see.
I turned it back to LTE only.
Like at home?
I honestly
you mean?
wasn't impressed with the 5G.
At home, you mean?
At home, I use Wi-Fi.
Oh. I know, but it's 5G. They tell you it's 5G Wi-Fi.
Mine's only 2.4.
Is it? Recently,
I don't
I had
use
to
the
call.
5G
I had to call
because
recently.
it never fucking works properly.
I know. I called recently, and
And now
she
what do
was
I
telling
notice
me,
on my phone? The 5G doesn't fucking work properly.
huh? They set me up with a different IP address at home because of what the internet was intermittent.
Did you upgrade it?
No, it's got. I think I'm on the fastest I can get.
The 1 gig or
That's
whatever?
what's super frustrating. Is you paid for the best one, and then it just goes intermittent. You're like, I'm like,
You can get the 1 gig here now. Huh.
anyways, this is a fantastic chat with Peter.
Peter.
One of my favorite books too, and it was a great chat with him about Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and the sci-fi and the magic and the occult, and it's fantastic.
Jack Parsons. Parsons Air Force Base.
JPL.
JPL.
Yeah, supposedly Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Oh, right. This is one with the house and the hippies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before the 60s. Yeah, it's like
Psychedelic.
free love before the 60s. This is like free love in the 40s.
Yeah. That seems like trouble.
Totally.
Trouble.
Trouble.
Commune out of control with too much power.
That's right.
The powerful people commune. I feel like that's worse.
I saw a picture of Jack, and I think, was it in his book? I don't know, but he's a good-looking dude.
In Peter's book?
Yeah. Or no, I don't know if somewhere I saw a picture of him, but yeah, he's a strapping dude.
Strapping?
Yeah.
Strapping young lad?
Yeah.
How old was he?
30s, I think. I mean, he's pretty young for
Lock up your
getting
daughters
into rocketry and all that.
and
you know?
your sons.
30s and 40s, maybe?
That's too old to get into rocketry?
No, it's
I have a
young
model
for
rocket
it.
upstairs.
Do you?
We should get into rocketry.
Nah, I don't want to do it.
Why not?
Because it just,
We can prove the Earth is
we know
round.
it is already. We know
Do
it's
we?
round. Yeah, people have done what we wanted to do before. Putting that rocket up in space, looking down. It's done. It's been done.
No, but let's build our own rocket now.
It's what?
Because now we won't be working soon. So we'll just build a rocket. You're already not working. You can.
I
work
was
on the
working
pro-
all weekend.
You
Long
can work-
weekend. I
What
was
did you do,
working all
painting?
I was working on the show. Working for Grey America. I
What'd you do?
was reading books.
That's not working for Grey America. Full-time podcast and working the long weekend away.
Yeah.
Is the book done?
It will be done tomorrow morning.
Really?
800 and something pages of it.
That means how many takes?
68 takes maybe.
Oh, that's
something
not
like that.
bad. Randall's calling me.
Oh, we're teasing a new audiobook coming out. It'll be Secret Doctrine Book 3. Dude, some of that book was amazing. Yeah.
Is it the best one?
Yeah, I think so. I like it. I like it the best, yeah. It was Annie Besant's putting all her notes together, all of Blavatsky's notes together, and it was a good read. Yeah.
So it's more so edited.
No, it's not that. It's just less about the commentaries and the stanzas and all that, like the books of Jan, right? Like that. A lot of her other stuff is based on that ancient writing, and this is a little bit more sort of spiritual. Like there's a part at the end of the book where I want to put that. When the book comes out, I'm going to put that page and a half in Instagram. It talks about getting out of the matrix and basically what's happening, I feel like, emotionally and spiritually to us right now. But she warns about magic and intention and yoga. Like it's pretty.
Warns about yoga?
Yeah. Like just.
Yoga's trouble?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
All of
if
it?
you're not, you have to know what you're doing. Like a lot of it is like, you know how we hear from some people about, like, let's say, Chris Knowles,
Mm-hmm.
like don't open up and don't do any of this stuff because you
Stretching,
don't know,
open
right?
stuff up.
Yoga is way more than stretching, dude. Like the
Not
real
for me, it's
yoga
not.
is like,
I'm a stretcher.
that's not yoga.
I just breathe
You're
and
stretching.
stretch.
You're just stretching.
It's
Well,
called
even the
yoga on the
breathing.
YouTube channel.
Yeah. When did you
Yoga.
start yoga?
Well, I haven't yoga in a while,
Oh yeah, I was doing it today.
but I've yoga'd.
I've started a stretching practice on my
Now
own.
that I get out a lot, I don't really need to. I don't have the yoga need anymore.
Yeah.
Not all of us are just sitting at home reading books for the show. And then I got my little thingamajig that hangs me upside down for a little before bed. I do a little bit of stretching before bed, maybe 10 minutes.
Nice. I've been doing it in the morning after meditation. I've been doing a meditation every day for a long time, for a few weeks now. It's been good. Actually, a couple months
I'm
probably.
a slow starter. I lie in bed for lie in bed, like pretending to sleep for like 15 or 20
Fuck,
minutes.
that's great, dude.
And then I'll sit up in my bed for a while. And
Yeah.
I slowed down my mornings quite a bit. It's better that way. Then I crawl in bed, have a coffee, get on the road.
Awesome.
Have a good hour of time,
Yeah.
Just gives you a bit of time. I think I'm going to go back to the bush this weekend. Get the fuck out of all this 5G before. I feel like it's going to be a fucking cold winter.
Oh yeah, it'll be dark winter.
Think it's going to be dark winter?
It might be.
I hope my AR's here by then.
I don't know. We talked I was just on the Union of the Unwanted tonight before we came out here. So this is Monday after the long weekend in
that was
August.
probably-
And Robert Malone was on there and he's pretty discouraged. I mean, a lot of the other people on the show, it was a fantastic show. I mean, people got to look up the Union of the Unwanted and watch this. Because if you want to kind of just an update on like COVID and the vaccine and stuff like that, this was like Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Kerry Madaj, Dr. Henry Ely, Dr. Jancy Lindsay, Dr. Frank Aeda, who we had on before, Joel Hirschhorn is on too, from Israel, Jessica Rose, talking about VAERS. I mean, it was like, I know,
in
like,
Israel when we had him on?
no, Jessica Rose was from Israel. And I mean, it was a fantastic, like, update on sort of
worried?
what's
They're
going on.
concerned?
Like, no, not all, like, look, a lot of them have been into this before Robert Malone. Robert Malone's just pretty exhausted. I think he's been taking the beatings because he's on these, like radio shows
So what
and
does
programs
Robert
that'll
say?
have him on, right?
What's
But
he think is going to happen?
I don't want to get into it on this show. I want to keep this sort of light and positive. And
It's all over.
yeah. Well, no, he's just not happy with what's happened with the vaccine rollout and everything, right? He thinks that the young people like under 50 definitely shouldn't be getting it, and the older people, there's a limit maybe. And I was kind of questioning him, like, well, how can you do that analysis if you don't have any long-term data? And they think that. So then after he left, there was a bit of a discussion around that whole thing, which is pretty interesting. And Kerry Madaj was talking about the microscopic blood samples from people before and after they were vaxxed, and it can get pretty dark. It's like, wow, what are they doing? But then there's some people like Tim James was there to lighten it up, and Henry Ely was lighting it up, and Frank Aeda had the natural cures, and so it was good. Like, it was a fantastic show, really. If people want a kind of an update from the doctors and a bunch of other people that are interested in what's happening.
The COVID update. That's what they should call it.
Yeah. Well, it's not always like, I mean, they don't usually have that many doctors on talking about it.
Oh, yeah,
He's talking about the
they swung into some
antibody
other
and enhancement, dependent enhancement stuff. And then, of course, they talked about how a lot of it's not really working, right? People are getting sick from it. And in Israel, most of the people that were in the hospital were vaccinated. And there's a lot of evidence that shows it's not really working, but they're pushing pretty hard. They're pushing pretty hard to blame the people that didn't get the job.
Wow, that's all falling apart. Even the people I know that I'm close to that have it are like, oh yeah, so this is just useless against this Delta variant. This is
Well,
great.
This is what's so weird. the media, the mainstream media, the narrative switched last week, like 4 or 5 days ago. It just went whoop. All of a sudden, put your masks back on because the vaccine doesn't work for the Delta. Why are they saying that?
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't.
What, they're telling us the truth all of a sudden? No, it's because they want to mask up and Sal from Colorado said it went in one day. It went from 5% masks to 50% masks because of that. All of a sudden, so now they want everybody masked up again.
I feel like Denver never got down to 5% mask.
Yeah, I know. Even here, I went to the mall on the weekend. I was gonna talk to you about it, and because they've opened up in Alberta for all intents and purposes, it's like pretty much wide open. Like I don't know how long it's gonna last, but I mean we have to believe it because it's happening. I mean, there's no, when I'm at in our little local stores in our
honestly
little
don't see
town,
how they can bring it back.
But in Calgary, in a big mall, I went to the popular mall there for a bit to pick up a couple of things, and it was weird. There's like 30%, 50%, so maybe 30 to 50% masked or as still.
Well, that's because people,
young people, people are scared of the Delta, and there's a bunch of people masked up. It's really weird to see all different ages on both sides of it.
Stampede was pretty maskless, so.
Yeah, well, apparently there's been some headlines about the Stampede causing some Delta super spreading as well.
All the headlines I've seen about the Stampede were that it wasn't a super spreader event.
Wow, that's good.
I've been wondering how this cat gets behind that curtain.
So, yeah. Anyways, that's kind of the update from that. I'll put a link to the Union I Wanted in the show notes.
Well, I appreciate that you go on there so that I don't have to.
I plugged your book at the end. I plugged your book at the end. Canadian Shame.
You should do more of that too.
Yeah, I'll go on shows for your book.
There you go.
I mean, I read the whole thing. I narrated. I read the thing twice, probably.
You probably know it better than I do.
No, you got the spiel down, Pat.
I went on Charlie Murphy's show and talked about it. Charlie Robinson. I'm glad you get the name wrong on his show as well as on ours. Oh, you went on Charlie's show to talk about it? Yes.
Wow, that's great.
That was last week, I think.
How did that go?
That was good. Charlie's great.
Yeah.
Always fun to talk to Charlie.
You went on Conspiracy Castle as well to talk about it?
We didn't really talk about the book.
Oh.
We just talked. Alex is a fun cat.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
He'd be fun to hang out with. I might have to try and bump into him the next time I'm down in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Probably this fall.
Yeah. Definitely.
I could see myself going to Texas in the fall, maybe once it starts getting cold here. Once the snow flies. Maybe like November, after hunt season too.
Yeah, good.
So what do you got?
I want to read a couple things, a quote. I got a quote for you, and I've got an operation project as well. And then you've got the card to read there from... What's this? Housekeeping. You got housekeeping to do?
Isn't that what all this is?
There's a timestamp in the show notes to get to the interview, but we like to ramble around here and chit-chat.
That try should have been at the beginning. I think I've had that for a while. Have I never played that before?
Yeah, I think you did when we first got it.
I can't. So what do you want to do first? The quote?
It's up to you.
Might as well do the quote or the narration.
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it?
Okay, Darren, guess who wrote this? No, I was going through this book and I had to highlight some of the things. They're talking about space exploration and planetary flourishing, and he says spaceflight is reliant on a dialectic of hard technology and the fluid tenuousness of dreams. Ours is now the aim of science fiction and the method of witchcraft. Though it is right to scorn false hope, we must engineer for miracles. The pursuit of science has always been the province of magic. If you feel crushed of hope, then do the work. There is no other path to salvation. Work is where inspiration arises. You are the radical thinkers. Do not limit your field of action. Do not close off your limitless potential.
Peter Gray.
Pretty good, eh?
That is pretty good. Peter was a fun chat.
I got a couple more here too.
Fun chat with a fun cat.
I got another one here too. That's weird. It was at the same page as the other one. That's
what
strange.
page?
Oh, this is interesting. We say that psychomagia is the science and art of changing the mind at will. The attempt was, as Crowley put it, a fizzle.
Fizzle. Fizzle dizzle.
But tangential effects are well known to practitioners who are well aware that the scientific language of modern magic is a conceit, and that the invisible world is far stranger than our logic and procedures can account for. Ritual, for all the talk of precision, has outcomes which cannot always be reliably predicted. In the case of the Babalon working, a chain reaction was triggered, and the fracture lines continued to spider out. The same could be said for the angelic work of Dee and Kelly, which inspired it, and so too the revelation of John.
Revelation.
One more.
Whoa! Breaks.
One more, buddy. 293. I gotta find this last one here.
If you go this far in the audiobook without making a mistake, then I wouldn't have to edit so much.
The supposed God-men that science fiction and occultism promised are not an esoteric or intellectual elite, but a predator class who pursue the sexless and deathless agenda of transhumanism.
Sexless?
Yeah.
I assumed it'd be oversexed.
Transhumanism becomes sexless.
No sex bots?
Well, I mean, it becomes
That's not sexless.
sexless between humans.
But bots? We get the bot?
Yeah, you get the bot.
All right. Well, that's not sexless. We come with a different word for that. Maybe it's intimacy-less?
Intimacyless, yeah.
Is that a word?
Intimicy.
I don't get it. Take us through that, Concert Ground.
No, it's okay.
No? You're not doing it? All right. Well, here.
What's that noise? Looks military to me. Definitely military. Probably classified, too.
Dish Fire, Prism, Sentry Eagle, Sigma, Mannequin, Artichoke, MK Ultra.
What was Artichoke again?
Operation Project.
Artichoke was an operation.
Well, I know.
I think it was one of the MK Ultra ones.
I feel like you should know them all.
I can't remember the exact details of each of them. There's a whole bunch of sub ones under the MK Ultra umbrella.
A good overview of each. You should be like the
of all the MK Ultra ones, or all of them. I have a huge list of. I know, but I have a huge list that I haven't even got through yet. I mean, I try to pick appropriate ones. Like this is very appropriate. This is Project Diana.
You should write the Operation Project book.
So this happens to happen.
Does it mean you're extra serious if you take off your glasses? Point at me with them.
I'm about to put them on,
okay.
so I can read.
Okay. All right, let's hear it.
This is from Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. It's very controlled right now. Happens to be from the same year as all this stuff was going on with Hubbard and Parsons and all that.
67?
46.
Oh.
You're not even close. And this is Project Diana, and this is named for the Roman moon goddess Diana. And it was an experimental project of the U.S. Army Corps in 46 to bounce radar signals off the moon and receive the reflected signals. This was the first.
I thought they couldn't do that till they put that was the
See,
lasers.
this is the start of the moon, dude. This was the start of it.
This is the lasers.
This was the first experiment in radar astronomy and the first active attempt to probe another celestial body. Darren, this was the break in the Virgin probe of the celestial bodies.
Another celestial body.
Was it Saturn?
It was a Sagittarius.
It was. It was the inspiration for later EME, Earth, Moon, Earth communication techniques. So this goes back to like the end of World War II. On the laboratory site, a large transmitter receiver and antenna array were constructed for this purpose. Let's see, I'm going to skip through all the technical details of all that, the Doppler shift, the antenna pattern. Project Diana marked the birth of radar astronomy, later used to map Venus and other nearby planets, and was necessary precursor to the U.S. space program. I'm losing my voice. It was the first demonstration that terrestrial radio signals can penetrate the ionosphere, opening the possibility of radio communications beyond the Earth for space probes and human explorers. It also established the practice of naming space projects after Roman gods, Mercury and Apollo, for example.
For example?
Yeah. So they demonstrated the feasibility of using the moon as a passive reflector to transmit radio signals from one point on Earth to the other around the curve of the Earth. The Earth-Moon-Earth or moon bounce path has been used in a few communication systems. One of the first was the secret U.S. military espionage PAMOR program. Oh, they call it a program and not a project. That's the passive moon relay in 1950, which sought to eavesdrop on the Soviet-Russian military radio communication by picking up stray signals reflected from the moon. The return signals were extremely faint, and the U.S. began secret construction of the largest parabolic antenna in the world at Sugar Grove, West Virginia, until it was abandoned in '62 as being too expensive. A more successful spinoff was the U.S. Navy Communication Moon Relay, or Operation Moon Bounce communication system, which used the EME path for U.S. military communication. In '60, the system was inaugurated with a lunar relay link between Hawaii and Washington, D.C. Huh. That's pretty interesting. Today,
maybe it's a big satellite.
Today, the Project Diana site is part of the Camp Evans Historical District, Info Age Science History Learning Center and Museum, and is maintained by the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club. Oh, get this. The antenna array was removed earlier and is now presumably lost. Of course.
From the moon?
So it's just lost. It's lost. They lost it.
They lost the antenna array?
Yeah.
From the field?
I guess that was with the documents from the moon landing. All in the same spot.
Oh, yeah.
They lost just like all that.
They misplaced it. I think that
Anyways,
threw it to the dump.
Interesting that it was around that same time, right? The year when they were doing that stuff. Yeah.
46?
Yeah, 46, 47 to
Roswell.
52. Yeah, right between Manhattan Project and Roswell.
You're 52.
51.
Right.
Okay.
Synchro broken. What do we got?
That's it.
Oh, I got, so I'll read the note from Sheriel. Dear Grimerica team, enjoy $500 for as many years as I have been listening after my account expired. And for your amazing 500 show achievement. I love you and your willingness to bravely explain to the world so many alternative viewpoints. Keep expanding, keep exploring. Many thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.
We're not explaining anything to anyone. We're just letting other people explain things.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess we try to explain some things from time to time. If you guys do want to help out with some of that support, help us keep expanding.
Help us keep going.
That's right. And do check, speaking of expired accounts, that is a thing that happens. I think the last time I was on the PayPal, it's something like 200 expired accounts.
Yeah.
So if you could, we almost have as many expired accounts as we do active accounts. Head over to your PayPal account, maybe check it out. There's a good chance your subscription might not be active anymore. PayPal don't like us. They just shut them off. I'm not saying anything bad about PayPal. It's not what I'm doing.
No,
here.
they do it
Not
to other
just-
shows too. Like it just goes
happens.
off. It just shuts off. And they say the show asked us to
We're
cancel
not
your
disparaging
payment.
PayPal
Yeah.
in any way.
No. And we're not canceling your payments either. So
We're not doing that either. We love you. Grimerica.ca/support if you can, when you can. This is show like 505 or something like that. If you could go, maybe you could do a one-time donation. Doesn't have to be $500. It could be $50, $5. Grimerica.ca/support. You could do a one-time donation, monthly donation. You could do a Stripe. You could do a Patreon.
Yeah.
Oh, we have new websites.
Yeah.
New Grimerica website. We also have a new Grimerica Outlawed website.
Awesome.
You could head over to both of those. You could go to Outlawed, sign up for Plus, get those extra shows, get that extra hour. All sorts of stuff. It's not just COVID stuff either. We do all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, we had a couple
Outlawed.
great episodes on China, and we got a couple sort of like reality surfing, or no, not reality surfing, sort of quantum reality, sort of almost like Nassim Harriman type episodes coming up as well. Darren, can you explain, or can I explain what Outlawed, like the plus is basically it's an RSS feed to plug into your podcast player.
Yes.
So it's not something you can watch anywhere or anything like that. It's solely audio. And then you get the full 2-hour episodes, or the full episodes, however long they may end up being, in a different feed. So you'll have like the free outlawed feed, and then you can always cancel that if you sign up for the plus one, because you get the full episode on the plus feed.
Correctamundo.
Yeah.
I think we'll end up stopping streaming eventually.
We stream the first half on Rockfin, basically.
For now. There's a lot of talk about stopping streaming altogether.
Yeah.
Right now,
but we're not sure what to do yet.
We haven't decided.
Because we're just streaming like Outlawed on Rockfin, and then the other show, this show, we're doing on YouTube and Rockfin.
Yeah.
But who knows how long that's going to last too.
Yeah, so we might just scrap all the video altogether except for the actual video content that we do.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you posted. Maybe you could email Graham, let him know what you think about that if you're one of the few people that do tune in and watch videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a bunch of these people that only watch on YouTube. We should actually mention this on the next stream we do on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because, it might be time for you guys to move on to other places. It's not my place to say. If there's a bunch of you, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. We'll still do it if there's a bunch of people that want it.
So, yeah, support the show if you can. Of course, the other ways to support the show is to head over to that Groundbreaker outlawed.ca, sign up for Plus. Huge help.
You can also rate the show as well.
Rate the show, share the show.
Send in content like synchronicities and your trip reports or UFO sightings or stuff like that.
Speaking of books and audio books, we got a whole collection going on over at on Adult Brain. I haven't updated the website yet, but we've got like Hamlet's Mill, Mysticism and Logic is out now. My Book of Canadian Shame is out on audio now. Secret Doctrine 1, Secret Doctrine 2, Secret Teachings.
Of all ages, yeah.
Of all ages. There's just a whole slew of books over there.
We did Eric P. Anthony's book as well, Song of the Immortal Beloved, which is like spiritual alchemy. It's a huge tome there. We did the updated version of that.
There is a ton of books out there. We got quite the esoteric catalog coming together. Head over to wherever you get your audiobooks. Type in Graham Dunlop, type in Grimerica. They'll all come up. Grab some of those, take a listen, share them around, let us know what you think.
Rate them.
Rate them
high.
Review them. You review my book too, if you don't mind.
Canadian Shame, right?
CanadianShame.ca. People have been a little triggered by the title. Left me a few nasty reviews.
Wow, really?
Oh, yeah. Bad title. The other one said bad search result.
What does that mean?
He didn't like that it was at the search. It came up in his search results.
What? I don't understand. Like in the Google search, it came up? So then he reviews the book?
Yes.
Wow.
That's. I think it was in an Amazon search.
A Canadian Shame. So
maybe I could start reading the bad reviews one day, but not today.
I don't know. I thought it had a bunch of good reviews too.
It does. There's many good reviews.
Yeah.
Head over CanadianShame.ca.
Oh, that's on audio too.
It's on audio.
Yeah.
As read by Graham Dunlop.
Yeah.
This Graham guy, he's okay. It's all I could afford.
Sitting at home all weekend reading.
Sitting at home all weekend reading my book. CanadianShame.ca, Grimerica.ca/support. What else we got? Contact@thecabin.com. We've launched that Montana tour. Arizona's filling up fast. That's the next live event as of right now. There's not going to be any more 2021 events now that the Scablands is sold out.
Arizona's Magic on the Mountain, right?
Yeah, that's about half gone right now.
Nice.
So if you want to get in on that, contact@thecabin.com/magic and contact@thecabin.com/Montana if you want to get in on that Montana trip with Randall and the boys in the spring. It's already about 1/3 sold out. It's going to be a fantastic time out there. Other than that, we love you guys and we hope you enjoy this fantastic chat with the fantastic cat, Peter Gray.
All right, today we've got Peter Grey with us. He's an author and co-founder of Scarlet Imprint, an amazing publisher of occult and esoteric books. And you've written quite a few yourself, Peter. Your latest one, The Two Antichrists, was fantastic. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be on Grimerica.
Yeah, this is, we just noticed Gordon White's book on there. We've had Gordon on a couple times. Yeah, and you sent us that book. We really appreciate that. And your book, it just felt like a fresh take on this whole thing. So I thought, we should talk about it. Then we could talk about other occult and esoteric things as well. But I mean, your book, like, it's been in the popular culture for a while, the last few years, like the whole Jack Parsons and the Babalon workings, and people have been talking about it in a really synchromistic way. But your book seemed to just really give a fresh take on the whole thing. I mean, it really just intrigued me from start to finish. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's one of those stories that people think they know in the occult, in particular. But when you start to break it down, there's still a lot of the story that hasn't been told in quite the way that I've managed to do it with Two Antichrists. Really, in terms of being able to go to a whole range of different sources and different voices, and finding these other texts which kind of reference it, and giving a much fuller view of like Jack's internal world, and also the world of L. Ron Hubbard and the other characters who've been somewhat kind of removed from the story in the way that it's been told. I know a lot of people will have encountered the Parsons story again with the debacle of the Strange Angel TV show, which quite interestingly they cancelled after one series, partly because it was dreadful, but partly because L. Ron Hubbard was about to kind of enter stage left. So there's about, there's only a couple of frames of L. Ron Hubbard, and then mysteriously, for some reason, the second series didn't turn up.
Oh, so what was the debacle about that, do you think?
So, well, I think that Scientology probably still has some power within the world of Hollywood, and I think some strings might have been pulled on that, because this is clearly a part of Scientology history that they don't really want to enter into the public domain.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been the case with the whole Crowley, Parsons, Hubbard story since pretty much the beginning. I mean, first of all, we had Scientology saying that Hubbard had gone in and broken up a black magic cult. This was sort of the big cover story that they ran with. And I found when I was researching the book that they repeated the story. I think it was at least as recent as the 80s, and they added a new detail to it. They decided that Robert Heinlein was in fact Hubbard's handler, and that was the op that was being done on Jack. But there's no truth in that at all. Heinlein certainly wasn't doing that. For people who've read his Stranger in a Strange Land, which was turned into The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie, Heinlein was very much Thelema adjacent. There's a famous essay in the occulture, kind of counterculture, by a guy called Adam Rostock, called "Whence Came a Stranger," which gives kind of gives a very clear indication that the book itself was really Thelema in code, because all the sci-fi guys who were around Jack, and Hubbard was one of them, they were all wild libertarian, kind of like loose, fast living people. And they were open to a lot of seemingly crazy ideas, many of which they found were coming true. So
that's what I find so amazing about it. I mean, I kind of want to step back a bit about, and just in general, let's just, for people that aren't too familiar with the whole thing, just maybe mention in brief, just a real brief summary, and then I want to jump back into the whole sci-fi portion of it. But the JPL and doing the Crowley stuff, and for Babalon working, maybe just really quick summary of that for people that
no
familiar with.
So Jack Parsons was a rocket scientist and an occultist, living in a mansion in Pasadena, and he was both the man who started the American space program when people were skeptical about the fact that we could land man on the moon. Jack was one of the early rocketeers who was convinced that this could be done. So his kind of reading of science fiction fed into the way that he was pursuing his science career. So he would literally read the Astounding magazine, which was the pulp sci-fi magazine of the time, and he'd find stories in there that seemed to be telling the future to him. So he read a story by a guy called Jack Williamson called Crucible of Power. And having read that, Jack had the realization that he could make a solid rocket fuel. And the solid rocket fuel that Jack developed is the critical element that put man on the moon. So without science fiction, there would be no man on the moon. Without Jack, who was at the same time as pursuing his science, devoted to the study of the works of Aleister Crowley, and was a member of the last surviving lodge of the OTO in the world, the Ordo Templi Orientis, Crowley's magical order. Jack was in a kind of critical place between the worlds of science fiction writers, and magic, and all of them were intermeshed. There was no sense of a difference between these worlds. So Jack ran a pretty crazy house, which he filled up with all the kind of bohemians and artists of the area. He placed a small ad for it, essentially to scare anyone off who wasn't a freak. And one of the people who ended up moving into this kind of madhouse, this place of kind of experimental living, you can think of it as in the same way you see the communes developing in the 60s. This is very much a pre-runner to those kind of experiments in living. All very much free love, and he invited the recently demobbed L. Ron Hubbard, who he knew as a science fiction writer and was a huge fan of his work. And Hubbard had just left the Navy and needed somewhere to stay. And when he saw this house filled with loose living crazy people, he decided that he wanted a piece of the action. So Hubbard moved into the parsonage, the mansion, with Jack, and soon ran off with Jack's girlfriend, because they were living in a free love setting. And so Jack lost his girlfriend to L. Ron Hubbard. This is all before Dianetics, before Scientology. Hubbard was just a science fiction writer, just a guy who come out of the Navy, but a guy with a lot of tall tales, a guy who was interested in psychic phenomena. He was interested in channeling. He was a natural medium. He was interested in hypnosis. He was pursuing all the kind of dark arts that are contingent with being a magician. And so Jack was really struck by him, even when he ran off with his girlfriend. The two just about managed to keep a lid on it. But when this happened, Jack decided that he needed to perform a piece of magic to get a new girlfriend. I mean, the whole Babalon working was not initially a huge undertaking. It wasn't designed to transform the world. It wasn't designed to bring through the goddess of the apocalypse. At first stage, it was simply Jack needed a new girlfriend, and Hubbard was the guy who he did the magic with to try and accomplish this end. So the two of them sat down and they did a piece of Enochian working to summon an elemental spirit, not a goddess, just an elemental spirit. So kind of further down the spiritual hierarchy, like not a big thing. So they did this work, and they had a series of phenomena occur. So there were lamps blown over. There was a windstorm. There was a spirit appeared in the kitchen, which they threw a magic sword at to stick in its place. I mean, there were all kinds of kind of things going on, showing that something was afoot. And then Jack and Ron went out into the desert, and Jack had a sense that it was done, that the work had been successful. And so when they went back to the parsonage, they found Marjorie Cameron on the doorstep. And Marjorie Cameron was a red-haired, green-eyed lady from Iowa, but of Irish descent, who fitted exactly the image of the elemental that they were trying to pick up. So he was the proof of the operation. This woman had appeared. This was a great success. Jack and her fell into bed for 2 weeks. Everything's going great. Then Marjorie goes back to New York to break up with her boyfriend, and Jack does something new. Hubbard's away, Cameron is away, and he goes out into the desert by himself. And this is the Mojave Desert where he'd been doing all of his rocket tests. So it's a place that he knew well. It's a strange environment, which is kind of like a mix of the natural wilderness and also kind of like industrial wreckage. So it's a very kind of post-apocalyptic kind of setting. He also did work around Devil's Gate Dam, which comes up a lot in Los Angeles folklore. So he went into the desert and he performed another set of rituals. And this time he heard a voice. And the voice which spoke to him, because Hubbard had been the scribe in the first working, Hubbard had channeled a lot of the work in the first piece. The voice that spoke to him dictated a book to him. And she's dictated a book to him, which is known now as the Book of Babylon or Liber 49. And the book did something very profound. It said to Jack that this was the fourth book of Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law. So Crowley's religion is founded upon a text called Liber Vel Legis, the Book of the Law, which is a book in 3 chapters that Crowley got in a series of sex magical workings with his wife in the desert in Egypt in 1904. And this voice comes through and it says to Jack, this is the fourth book. This is the book that Crowley didn't know was coming, that completes the whole cycle. And so it's a major heresy. It's a huge and terrifying heresy because Crowley's still alive, and Jack is sending him money in England to kind of keep him in cigars and champagne as he kind of like he goes down into his old age and quite soon death. So Jack's in trouble if he tells Daddy about the book. And the book also contains a series of kind of quite terrifying sounding prophecies. So Jack comes back and Hubbard returns, and Hubbard regales him with a vision of a woman on a giant cat-like beast. And Jack hears this, and he's like, well, this is an image from the Book of Revelation. This is the image of Babylon on the beast. This is the image in Crowley's Thoth Tarot of lust. This is another proof that something's really happening. So they do a 3-day working to birth Babylon, to bring the force of this goddess through. And the idea that Jack has is that Crowley's book is very much a book of war and destruction. I mean, if you read Liber Vel Legis, it's a little bit like the Quran. It's pretty swords and fire all the way through. And Jack's musing on this because we've just had the Trinity test. So the nuclear bomb has gone off and the world is changed forever. So Jack is looking at the power of the atom that's been unleashed in the world and the way that the world has changed. And he's going, oh my God, the atom bomb is this Horus force. It's this force that Crowley was talking about. And we need a way to kind of tame this force. We need a way to direct this force to prevent the destruction of the world, to prevent everything going. And Jack's solution to this is Babylon. Jack's solution to this is this female savior figure who he's trying to decide whether she's a goddess who exists beyond the abyss, like in standard Thelemic doctrine, where she's not incarnate on earth, or as the voice has told him, that she's about to manifest on the earth, she's about to appear. And there's a sort of back and forth where Jack is trying to decide whether Marjorie Cameron is in fact the goddess, and whether she's the one, and whether this is the beginning of a radical new age of sexual liberation and transformation, which is very much what we see in the 60s. So when we look at 60s counterculture, when we look at the kind of world that we all find ourselves in, we can see it very much in terms of the Babylon working as having been predicted by a lot of the themes that Jack was involved with. So that's the brief that's the brief version of the Babalon working. So this is probably the most famous modern magical exploit that has occurred. I mean, you can't find another rocket scientist in the occult. I mean, you can't find another person who has this level of cultural cut through. Certainly with Thelema. So it's a major event. And what I do with the book is I look not only at that story, which we know very well, but the later story where we move into the Antichrist material, and that's certainly not something that's very clear in people in the public domain.
Yeah, even the normal perception, I think, of the Babalon working seems to be very limited to that one sort of ceremony or one weekend or whatever it was, the few days. And you've already explained that it's much more than that. And then the two Antichrist thing is fascinating. But to jump back to the sci-fi thing a little bit, which is super fascinating to me, is because Clarke was around that time as well. And then Herbert from Dune was shortly after that, but even Heinlein and Hubbard, like all these sci-fi writers that are so famous today.
When did Star Trek come out?
With Rod, I don't know.
I feel like that was probably, there's a couple of those things that came out that sort of opened up the ways. Is this where Contact at the Desert starts? Contact in the Desert?
There's a sort of there are a few ways that people try and spin this. So the sci-fi writers were certainly all looking to the future, and many of them are kind of Thelema adjacent. So you can read Star Trek in quite a Crowleyan fashion and say, well, this actually looks like a kind of Thelemic future that they're talking about. It's very egalitarian. There are men and women working together, exploring space. I mean, it's all in the same area. But the critical thing that after Jack dies, one of the things that Marjorie sees a UFO. And she's probably not a very reliable witness, as is often the case with these kind of sightings. But Marjorie had mental health issues. She did a lot of drugs. But she certainly saw a UFO, and she thought that this was perhaps somehow a proof of the Babalon working having been effective, of a doorway having been opened and something having come through. And that's that motif we see come up in occulture with Kenneth Anger. So when Kenneth Anger makes Lucifer Rising, and there's a kind of quite famous iconic image of a UFO appearing on the Giza Plateau above the Sphinx in Lucifer Rising, with this incredible kind of Bobby Beausoleil guitar music riffing on in the background. Obviously, before Bobby falls in with Charles Manson and that crew. But the reason for that is because Kenneth Grant and Marjorie Cameron are hooked up in a really kind of unlikely Los Angeles kind of disaster where Jack having died, and we'll go back and do the Jack death story. Jack having died, Marjorie spent her life kind of trying to find Jack again. And at one stage, her and Kenneth Anger are taking cross-sex hormones. So she's taking testosterone and he's taking estrogen.
Wow.
And they're both in a kind of crazy attempt to mesh their kind of dysfunctional sexualities, because Anger's I think pretty much exclusively homosexual. Cameron was pretty omnivorous, but she did prefer men. So the UFO thing kind of explodes, and all the source of sightings that happen after it. So the way that I frame it in the book is that the Babalon working is between
Manhattan Project and Roswell, right?
And Roswell. Yeah. And there have been some crazy attempts to tie Jack to Roswell, but I won't do them. I won't do them on this podcast. But there's a conspiracy called the Collins Elite that people can look at.
Yeah.
Where there's the idea that Jack opened a doorway and UFOs aren't actually extraterrestrials, but they're the devil, and that the apocalypse is coming because of what Jack did.
Yeah, which is it's
partial truth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but the whole sci-fi influence, like the fact that so much of our modern space program started then. I mean, this is Jack and JPL, and then it became NASA after Jack had died, and Hubbard starting his own massive religion it's influenced culture like crazy, and all the big names in sci-fi, not all the big names, but a lot of the big names in sci-fi back then. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me how much of an influence that whole thing has had in our modern day.
I'm still not convinced that the whole NASA thing isn't just some occult fucking church or something. I mean, like the moon measurements and stuff, I'm of the mind that I don't even think they're real. Either the moon's not real or the numbers aren't real. So pick one. But you can't have both. Either the moon isn't what we think it is, and it's made by people or something else, or the numbers are all fake. And so all the weird correlations between size and spin and rotation and all this other stuff, is just crazy occult numbers that are written in books at NASA because NASA's not a space place. It's some crazy occult fucking, I don't know, but I that's not even a question, but I feel like you've got some thoughts on it.
I think the NASA appears to be an occult-minded agency in a variety of ways. It's hard to see how coherent their space theology is, but they certainly have some ideas. I mean, when you read the documentation, and they're clearly looking for. They're stating that they're looking for the remains of alien civilizations. Like they're aware that there is a possibility that they will find something on Mars. That looks pretty definite to me. They don't like to make a big song and dance about it because whatever people's view is on the face or any of these other kind of like structures, whether they are anything. But if we found life on Mars, I don't think NASA would. Well, the remains of life on Mars, I don't think NASA would be surprised. I think they're looking for it. Yeah, which is exciting. I'm surprised that they're not more open about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's coming. I mean, soft disclosure is coming. I mean, they're already talking about the UFOs. They're getting more money to start looking at all this stuff. So
UFOs from the moon.
But I think Darren's also talking about like the creation of NASA as well, right? From some of the Nazi.
I don't know what NASA
Project Paperclip and all that. I mean.
Well, you have all that. You have Werner von Braun coming in from Project Paperclip. You have all that stuff. You have these crazy occultists starting NASA. And then we have to trust their numbers, which tell us that, 27.3 rotations of the moon. The moon's 27.3% the size of the Earth. And it works the other way, too. 366 days, 0.259 days for an Earth revolution. And it's 366.175% the size of the moon. I mean, and then you've got the correlations with the sun and the mass dynamics and the fact that it seems to be heavily weighted on the front side to the point that we can't even orbit the thing properly. We have to make corrections in our orbit because there's such a mass difference between the front and the back of the thing.
Did you see the wobble thing that they were talking about a couple of days ago?
I missed all that. I heard it was going to cause some flooding though or something.
Yeah, they're saying 2030, 2035, they're saying that there's going to be pretty major flooding due to a wobble in the moon. So I think that speculation and talk about that will continue to rise.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
Oh man. So what about like speaking of interplanetary societies, like was Arthur Clarke with his British Interplanetary Society and proposing satellites back in 45? Like, is that adjacent to any of this? Were they all connected?
I don't know if Arthur C. Clarke was. I'm not sure.
Because that was happening across the pond in the same year, like the same years. Yeah. I mean, it's so incredible to me.
Yeah. So
what about the importance of sci-fi for us nowadays? Even, I mean,
sure.
I feel like my dad used to say to me, if you can imagine it, it can happen, right? And I feel like. Is sci-fi? Are these people like Parsons channeling that little book in the desert, and a lot of the channelers that have amazing books, and a lot of it is very sci-fi-ish. Are they picking up from something? Or, I mean, I feel like it starts with an idea and then it starts to almost like an egregore develop into something real.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I mean, that's why I feel like sci-fi and all these, like this fiction is so important because it really will lead us towards something.
Yeah, I think we may well be on the verge of another science fiction renaissance. I wouldn't be surprised with the release of something as big as the Dune film this year. I think that people are going to reassess the whole vision of science fiction and the whole sense of what it means to be human and why we're here and what our purpose is. And I think one of the things that humanity has lost is a sense of common purpose. And that was something that the moon landings gave us. I mean, there was a sense of common purpose that's rather more constructive than direct shooting war with the Russians. And again, as tensions escalate over China, it would probably do us a lot of good to think about what we share as humanity and think about our destiny in the stars rather than engaging in too much saber rattling, especially with the nuclear arsenal still there.
Yeah. Or a big rock coming from space. I mean, you know, how many times has civilization been reset due to some other extraneous circumstance? So you know.
I mean, these are the reasons why people should be thinking very seriously about the Mars colony. I get flack for it, but
me too.
But Elon Musk is right in this sense. If we don't become an interplanetary civilization, the chance of us being destroyed by one of these events, whether it's ecological collapse, whether it's a meteor strike, whether it's nuclear war. I mean, really, if we want to keep this game going, then we really need to colonize space. We really need to move to Mars.
Have you heard of that religion astronism at all? It started in the UK, I think. We had the fellow on who created it. It's fascinating.
No, I missed that one. I missed that space call.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it would fit right.
He's really
it seems like it would fit right in with like your like after reading your book, I was like, oh my god, this would be like the occult aspect of astronism. But it's very non-dogmatic. It's very much about the feeling that we get from looking at the stars and realizing that we have to move off this planet at some point. It goes back to referencing ancient religions all the way back in time where we're looking at the stars, and so much is based on astral mythology from the stars.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at both Crowley and Parsons, the big things that they do is they go out under the stars.
Yeah.
You know, and if you look also modern magicians, so if you read Gordon White's Starships, you know, Gordon's had this experience. This is pretty common amongst magicians. There's, you know, there are a few clear rituals, and Crowley points the way with it with Liber Nu is his right for that. But it's not very different to the experience that anyone can have if they take some friends and they drive out into the desert or somewhere where they have a good picture of the sky, and, you know, with or without psychedelics, have that experience of we're monkeys on a rock, and look how big and beautiful this universe is. And that sense of scale, I think, is very much needed, especially when the majority of the population spend all of their time, you know, anchored onto a phone this far away from their face, you know, taking square pictures of themselves for social media likes. It kind of resets you quite radically when you spend some time and look out into time and space like that.
Yeah, we had an event.
Well, you have your own space call. Let's not just gloss past that. Graham's like an avid go out under the stars and summon things guy.
No. I haven't.
So do you think this is a good thing or?
Well, hell yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Because he gets it both ways. He gets it both ways. Some people are like, you better watch that, and other people are like, fucking party on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you think that's fine? Because if the UFOs are from hell, then I mean, we got to think about that.
If the UFOs from hell, then I'm in real trouble.
Okay. Yeah. Probably most of us.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like as a magician, I'd say, you know, take precautions, but play the fucking game. I mean, we're here to play the game.
I like it. I like that attitude. Take precautions, but play the fucking game. That's fantastic. I mean, there's also the whole black triangle thing. And I mean, I wanted to ask you about, because, you know, a lot of, you know, your book is about like, hey, let's get off this planet and let's sort of manifest that in a magical sense as well. But what about trying to manifest all these people that are flying around in black triangles that might be leaving the planet already and get them to, you know, disclose some information?
Yeah, I think there is scope for people to pursue the kind of work that was going on in America in various circles, both elite and otherwise,
right,
with using methods of contacting or trying to contact. Particularly, we saw that with seance work. We saw that with Ouija. I mean, these have always been very popular ways of trying to establish those channels of communication. And again, we've seen it with psychedelic drugs as well. You know, the only caveat I always have with these things is that you need to check your sources. You know, it's very easy to get carried away with seeming revelations that turn out not to be. But I think it's one of the things that people have shied away from because they're frightened of the risk. They're frightened of getting communication. And magic is about that. Magic is about spirit contact, and that's very much the way that things have changed in the occult since
chaos magic.
You know, probably since Kenneth Grant. I mean, one of the critical things with Kenneth Grant, who was the UK student of Crowley. He was his secretary, you know, up until Crowley died, and he formed a group called the Typhonian OTO, which is not the official Californian Caliphate OTO, but had a very different take on things. And Kenneth Grant pursued the UFO thing in quite a radical way with his focus on LARM. So Crowley did a portrait of an entity called LARM, which looks like kind of a classic grey, or people say it looks like a classic grey, but the eyes are very small. So it's you know, it's a bit of a stretch. But Grant saw this picture and he thought it was really important. He got it from Crowley, and he pursued this thesis via H.P. Lovecraft and various other kind of like literary sources, and he kind of cut and mixed all of these things into his understanding of what magic was and where it should go. But he was very much about contact. But he was also, like Lovecraft, not quite sure whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. And he kind of shifts about in his text as to whether it's something we should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what about for people that want to dabble into this? I mean, it like you did mention, you know, sort of be careful, protect yourself or whatever. I mean,
Sure.
there is like a risk, right, of contacting something that you shouldn't be, or that you're not ready for, or I mean,
Yeah.
what just before I forget to ask this and we lose track, because I feel like it's a real important time, because I always have people asking me,
You
like,
do it
how do I
accidentally. Because I don't consider myself a magician, but some people would probably consider me a magician. So do I need to be careful? Because I'm not actually doing ritual. I just do it all through lifestyle and mindset.
You're more of a new thought magician. I mean, which is another question I had for you, because it kind of mixes in new thought blended into a lot of the stuff these guys were doing.
Yeah, the real thing that the magicians have missed is the way in which a lot of magic did blend into new thought, and a lot of the stuff that's in the new age is stuff that magicians kind of were stupid and didn't follow up on. So
The intention aspect of it, or
I love how Gordon put it when he's like, if the magicians would just look in the new thought parking lot, they'll see how much nicer the cars are.
yeah. It's a damn good point. Yeah, and they did. They looked at it with a few things. So one of the guys that I mentioned in the book is a guy called Kue, who he was one of the first people with these affirmations, and he'd say, "You every day you wake up and you repeat 24 times in every day in every way I'm getting better and better." This was his like affirmation, and he was like a huge hit in America with this. And the Thelemites, the magicians at the time, they kind of saw this and they thought, "My God, we can do this." And so they tried to market it. They tried to create a hybrid thing called psychomagia, And they produced they were going to produce like a rosary so that you could count off the repetitions of the mantra when you said it every morning. And they were aware that there was a crossover between these two things, but it's only people like Hubbard who really kind of like went after this.
Mechanized it.
Yeah. I think the magicians kind of ran away from it a little bit. I think there was a reticence to go in this direction. But there's good technology and there's good people there.
What happened in psychomagia then? What happened to that?
It just fizzled out.
It
just didn't quite work. They were kind of playing around with it. This was the Canadian Lodge. I think we're doing this with Frater Akkad. They were talking about this, and Crowley thought it was a bad idea, but they tried it and it didn't really take. But they produced a few little bits. But it's all there. I mean,
but Hubbard really sort of mechanized the whole thing, and that's what.
Yeah, Hubbard went for it. I mean, Hubbard, like Crowley, was voracious. He read everything. He chased up things. He met the crazy people, and he tried to get hold of their secrets and find out what worked. Perhaps the difficult thing that you find with Scientology is that Hubbard kept stuff for himself. It didn't necessarily go out in the teachings to the minions. But going back to protection, this is something the New Age all know. It's basic spiritual hygiene. It's like, keep a diary. Don't believe everything that the voices tell you, so you don't go fucking crazy. Check in with your friends. Make sure you can still go out and buy a cup of coffee without feeling you're being followed by the men in black. These are bad signs. Keep yourself healthy. Eat the right food. Saltwater bath is like a classic thing that people need to do and generally don't. Like,
I do this all the time. Does it count if I just use my Epsom salts?
Epsom salts is great. Perfect. If you're doing that, you want to say a little affirmation when you're doing that. You want to like consciously think about what you're doing and just add your intentionality to that. That's a really good thing to do. Really important.
So intention's very important too when it comes to
Hugely important. Hugely. And that's one of the big lessons of Crowley. Crowley was strongly about intentionality. I mean, although popularly we think about Crowley in a very high ritual sense, we think about magic circles, we think about all the equipment. When he was writing with Jack at the time, and you look at their correspondence, Jack's arguing for all of the high ceremonial, and Crowley's writing back and going, no, it's simpler than that. And this is particularly in regard to sex magic, because Crowley boiled it all down to intentionality with the use of sex and or drugs. That was his ultimate point. He was like, we get down to kind of a tantric yoga approach.
He didn't really have that much respect for Jack, did he? I mean, you wrote a couple of his letters in your book, and I was like,
I cannot believe the idiocy of these goats. He wrote about Jack and Hubbard, and then he says, "And no disrespect to goats." He was really. The problem is that Crowley's dying in England while Jack's having a kind of like a wild time in California, and Crowley is writing letters and receiving letters from all of the people there, and he's playing them off against each other, because Crowley is also a bit of a shitty character, and he's also trying to work out who he's going to pass everything on to. So to start with, he thinks it's this guy called Wilfred Smith, who's an Englishman who headed up the lodge. But then he gets letters back from other people and he goes, oh no, Wilfred's sleeping with everyone in the lodge. He's turning it into he's turning it into a love cult. This is not what I mean. So he tells Wilfred that he should go away and try to discover which god he is, and then come back and tell him when he's discovered, which is just a polite way of kind of like getting him out the door.
Do your 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. And
then he makes Jack head of the lodge. And then Jack seems to be going off the rails, and Jack tenders his resignation, and then Crowley doesn't accept it. And so Crowley is a shit with everybody. So him being a shit with Jack is not really a great surprise. Eventually, he hands over the reins of the organization to a guy called Grady McMurtry, who was an American guy who'd served in the Second World War. And this really impressed Alistair, because Crowley thought that the head of a Neo-Templaric order should be blooded. And the fact that McMurtry had served with distinction meant that he was the candidate. But what Crowley didn't foresee is that when McMurtry came back to California, he ended up having a crazy adventure where he took a whole bag load of STP and LSD, got washed out to sea, and then deposited like unconscious back on the beach, and doesn't seem to have recovered from that particular episode.
Wow.
And McMurtry's he's the crazy freewheeling like hippie uncle who runs OTO Incorporated for a period. And I hear good and bad things about him. But that's that was Alistair. So Parsons was the most talented guy. But yeah, there are criticisms. There are criticisms out there, and they're pretty famous ones.
And then he, I mean, it's just so sad that he passed away pretty quickly. 52, was it?
Yeah. It was 52.
I mean, that was in sort of right after all this stuff. I mean, it's so
So he did the Babalon working. So this was like 3 months, January to March 46. And people assume that things went wrong and Jack died kind of immediately afterwards. But in 1948, Jack did his second working. Jack did his Antichrist working in 1948, and he died in 52. So that's going to be 6 years after the first working.
Yeah.
So it's a good period of time. It's not an immediate make contact, everything's happening, bang. And for the listeners who aren't up to speed with the story, Jack, as a chemist, was leaving and packing up his lab, and he dropped a vial of fulminate of mercury, which is highly explosive, which detonated on impact with a floor in the storeroom and blew up the entire place. And Jack died. Jack died having lost his arm and half his face of burns in a pretty horrific fashion.
Jesus.
Was there any like suspect of foul play?
This is huge. This is like there's a couple of stories. One theory was Jack had testified about a guy who testified about how to make a pipe bomb, and ended in a trial which ended up with this guy being convicted of a car bombing. So there was an initial theory that this guy had come back and placed a bomb and killed and taken his revenge that way. Cameron, Jack's partner, had a whole range of kind of conspiracy theories about other ways in which he might have died, but none of them really hold up. I mean, it's pretty. The material that Jack was working with was highly explosive. I mean, dropping that would blow stuff up. People had commented previously about some of the sloppy ways that he dealt with high explosives. I mean, when they started off their rocketeering, the guys were referred to on campus as the Suicide Squad due to their ability to blow shit up by mistake. So it's entirely possible that happened, and there have been attempts to find a shadowy figure who may have finished Jack off. There have been attempts to say maybe it was military intelligence, because one of the things Jack was going through is he'd lost his security clearance because he'd taken some documents. He'd taken some documents away to work on prior to him probably going to Israel to work for the Israelis. And so the other conspiracy theory is that the American state decided you're not going to go and work for Israel. And they finished him off to prevent him taking the technology elsewhere.
What about supernatural conspiracies?
Supernatural conspiracy. I can give you one.
Awesome.
in the first working, Hubbard has the voice say some quite terrifying things to him. The goddess talks about, I am become living flame. And there's a lot of talk about a fiery death in his future. I mean, it look when you read it in retrospect, I mean, it looks like it's predicting Jack's death by fire or by explosion. So here are two possibilities. One is that he took these as like kind of deep hypnotic suggestions, and these deep suggestions that were lodged in him. In Scientology terms, we call this an engram. And this engram was lodged in him by Hubbard, perhaps inadvertently, which led to him making this error and killing himself.
Yeah.
The other possibility to consider is whether Hubbard killed Jack magically by mistake. I'm not saying that he deliberately set out or cursed Jack or did any of those things, but one of the things that Hubbard did after working with Jack is he started to take on some of Jack's accomplishments for his own. So there's a short story he writes under a pseudonym, which credits Hubbard with creating a rocket engine. And that's clearly Jack. This is something that Jack did, but Hubbard is then trying to say, L. Ron Hubbard did this because there was no lie too big for Hubbard. But as Hubbard got deeper into Crowley, and my summation in the book is that Hubbard's fascination with Thelema and with Crowley continued after he split up with Jack. And one of the things that happens is that Hubbard begins to view himself as the heir of Crowley in some sense, and the Antichrist himself in some sense. And Jack's doing the same thing, unbeknownst to Hubbard. But I think magically, when you have two things in the world like this, when you have two Antichrists at the same time, then one of them doesn't need to exist. So Hubbard doubling Jack created the magical possibility for Jack to no longer be needed as surplus.
Right. Even though the real definition of Antichrist doesn't mean there just can only be one. I mean, there could be anybody who's
can be many.
Antichrist, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be a singular person or, yeah.
But Hubbard's understanding was pretty much singular.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part about it. I did want to make sure you touch on the two Antichrist part of your book too before we run out of time. Is there anything else you can expand on that? I mean, that's a part that nobody really seems to understand, that they both were considering themselves that or called themselves that or were trying to take that from Crowley or.
Yeah, Hubbard, as I show in the book, had a long time fascination with Crowley, and it breaks the surface in a couple of times on public record. So he gives some lectures in 1948, check my note, 52. In the Philadelphia lectures, he refers to my friend Aleister Crowley, and this is backed up by some off-record stuff by Hubbard's son, who's a guy called Nibs, and Nibs is a really unreliable witness. Like, again, a difficult character, but he insists that Hubbard was obsessed with Crowley, was reading all of his books, and he gives a very garbled account of it in an interview to Rolling Stone and a few other places these can be found online. If you search for L. Ron Hubbard, Nibs, Crowley, you'll probably bring it up. So Hubbard is definitely following this interest. He goes to London before he gives this My Friend Crowley speech. He sets up one of his major bases in Saint Hill in East Grinstead in England. He's thinking about himself in terms of this great cult leader. And what I find in the book is when we get to the higher Scientology grades, particularly a grade called OT8, Operating Thetan 8, Hubbard, again, at the very end of his life, makes some very strong apocalyptic statements where he essentially identifies himself as Antichrist and positions Scientology as a world force that's designed to prevent the second coming. But the second coming isn't the second coming of Christ. The second coming is an alien invasion from the Markabian galaxy. So we've got like kind of a crashing together of science fiction, biblical theology in Crowley, which goes right the way through Hubbard's life.
That's fascinating. Has anybody tried to make the connection of just to switch topics briefly here with actually no, before I do that, what about the Antichrist part for Jack then for Crowley?
Okay, so Crowley doesn't really talk about Antichrist. Crowley identifies himself as the B666 of Revelation. And one of the things that Crowley is looking for in his life is a scarlet woman, or a woman to function as Babylon, as the whore of Revelation. So you have the whore and the beast as this kind of like you can see them almost in tantric terms, as you know, Shakti and her consort, fierce consort form. And Jack does something slightly different. Jack, after the disaster of the first working, after losing his security clearance, he has a dream where Babylon returns to him again. And he engages in a second and less known working, an Antichrist working, where he performs sex magic for a 17-day period. Right. And then he has a vision on the astral where he travels to the city of Chorazin. And Chorazin is the reputed birthplace of Antichrist. And Chorazin is a city in the Bible. It's built out of black basalt, and Jack travels there in this final dream sequence, and he encounters the prince of the power of the air. So he meets the devil again, and the devil instructs him, and Jack returns and believes that he's accomplished. He believes he's accomplished a Thelemic ordeal called the Ordeal of the Abyss, which is like one of the big kind of staging points in magical progress in that system. And so Jack believes that he is now the Antichrist on Earth, and he issues a manifesto. And the manifesto is very, like all of his work, it reads like libertarian kind of like philosophy mixed in with anti-Christianity. And Jack believes that the repressed sexual forces are needed to be liberated in order for mankind to transform itself and to be able to master the powers unlocked by the atom bomb, and to transform the world into a Thelemic paradise where everyone is essentially doing their will. So it's a major theological step that he's taking as a result of having undergone this working. And Jack is convinced that he is the Antichrist, will lead a nation, notably probably America, to accept the law of Thelema within a set period of time, and that the goddess Babylon will be born upon earth.
So interesting how the sexual liberation really has happened. I mean, if you look at that part of culture, it's gone 100% full blown. I mean, and now, yet the libertarian aspect, this sort of started becoming fascism in a way, or that's what seems to have come out of this whole thing. I mean, I
think we're in a weird state because a lot of the things that Jack's saying is still relevant. So I push back slightly on the sexual liberation. I think there was a lot of potential in the 60s, and there was a moment of great sexual experimentation, particularly on West Coast America, and we see that still having its ramifications. I mean, all of the sex cults are still pretty much American things,
right?
You know, it's still coming out of the Bay Area or out of LA. But I would personally argue that we're actually entering an age where there's perhaps going to be greater restriction on sex, even as it becomes increasingly commodified and we become hyperstimulated by the overabundance of pornography. I think what we actually lose is a lot of the intimacy and transformation of power that sex can contain. So I think on one level, we superficially seem to be in a sexually liberated age, but in another way, I think we're still pretty repressed.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like a cheap,
that's fascinating.
It's like a cheap fucking Hollywood fake sexual liberation.
Yeah. While they get ready to parcel us all off with fucking sex robots.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And you lose that intimacy and the magical aspect of it. Wow, that's fascinating. Huh.
Yeah.
So here's a weird question. Has anybody tried to put together or match up one of Jack's predictions in his Liber of the Hillarian within 7 years being the birth of Hillary Clinton in 47?
No, I've seen the Hillary Clinton as the whore of Babylon kind of like stuff. I love the American Christian evangelist kind of like endless rereadings of Revelation. No, that's funny. I like that. And then of course we have, is it Barbara Bush? Is she Crowley's daughter?
Yeah. I heard that one too. Yeah. That's funny.
My feeling is that a lot of those prophecies fell by the wayside with Jack's death.
Yeah.
So there are some things that you can add up. Marjorie Cameron gives birth to a child, which by my calculation fits the dates. Her daughter was a lady called Crystal who had a pretty rough upbringing because Cameron gave her LSD when she was very young, and she let her be sexually abused by various men, and she just kind of let her run wild and had a tough time as a result of it. Crystal, I think, is still alive, but like everyone who's involved with this, those people want nothing to do with they want nothing to do with the story after that point.
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't Jack's child. Just to make that clear as well.
Right.
She was a child by another partner at that stage.
And there was a Northrop back then. Is that from the Northrop Grumman as well? Like it goes, the aviation name is.
I've been asked that before, but not that I'm aware of. Perhaps one of the researchers listening to this could shed some light in the comments, because I haven't chased that one down.
Yeah. So what do you, Darren, do you have any other questions at all?
Well, I mean, it really seems to boil down to that intentional lifestyle seems to be sort of the basis that the old school magicians were coming up with, is sort of my takeaway from a lot of this. And that seems to be the crossover to the new age stuff, which to me I would argue is sort of that baseline of, because like, I don't even know that I'm a new age magician. I'm just more of an intentionalist. So I've got a very intentional place where I want my life to end up. I've got a very intentional view of how I'm going to get there. So I get up in the morning intending on what steps I'm going to take to get there, which is kind of analogous to what you're talking about there with the trying to be better every day, or, it just kind of fits into that. Whereas it gets into that pasture that used to teach Trump back in the day about positive thinking. It all comes back to that, in my estimation anyway, of just getting up in the morning with a plan, with not being stuck in the drift, as Napoleon Hill would have put it in his conversations with the quote unquote the devil, of just not getting caught up in the drift of life. And there's none of us that are just living an intentional life. And that's sort of baseline one. And maybe that's just sort of the shallow end of the pool, is that intentional life. And you can get into the deep end of the pool with some of this ritual and kind of stuff like that. But at the same time, it seems a little risky.
Yeah, everyone works at the level that they feel is appropriate for them. I mean, what you're describing there, if you look at the way that's come into modern magic, probably the best thing for that is when the Temple of Psychic Youth were working, they have a thing that you can look up called the message from the temple. It's obviously spelled the way that Genesis spells everything, with like 2 E's. And that's like a basic, that's a basic magical instruction that they issued for their group as a modern magical instruction, going, discover who you are and become closer and closer to it every day. And there's a lovely version of it on YouTube if people want to look that up. That was very important in the counterculture of the time that fed into a lot of the English magic that I was interested in.
Wow, that's
so yeah,
fantastic.
We're all magicians, and we're all using a variety of different tools, and we can work at different levels. And for people to be living intentional lives, however they do it, that's the
Well,
aim.
you're doing it either way.
Yeah,
That would be my argument, is you're doing it either
Yeah.
way. It's just if you're not taking control of that attention, then wherever your life is right now, you intended that.
Yeah.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you probably, I mean, there's outside circumstance and there's this and that, and you can't be positive every day. I deal with that myself, but there's still, wherever you are in your life, I mean, 99% of that for 99% of us is that's the
Where you've been heading, kind of.
well, that's the equation of your decisions. This is the ultimate where your decisions and your intentions have gotten you to this day. And if you think you've been intending someplace else, well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Do you have any advice then for people, like instead of getting stuck doom scrolling, or just becoming more intentional or becoming more aware of themselves, or even how to discover who you are? I mean, that's pretty tough for a lot of people.
Well, one of the easy things to do is this. Crowley is an impossible tar baby. It's a terrible trap for most people to go down occult spirals. So my Thelema can be reduced to 4 words, which is do what thou wilt. I mean, the core teaching of Crowley that anyone could take away and do something useful with is do what thou wilt. And this is a phrase that you say to other people.
Right.
This is the same as like...
This is giving them the freedom, right? This is
this is
detaching yourself from the personalization of it.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're offering people the opportunity for them to do their thing, to be themselves and to find themselves, and not to impose your theology or ideas upon other people, but to see everyone as a sovereign, as an individual who has the potential to do that. Now, it's not your business whether they do it or not, but you can offer the opportunity for other people to discover who they are and to find why they're here and enable them to do it. So that's what I'd say, and just keep reading wildly, understand that the truth is out there in science fiction. It's out there in the older books of magic. It's out there everywhere. You can learn from everyone and everything, and building that intentionality, building a positive life with good people, and trying not to spend your life online. I think you can go a long way.
Fantastic advice. Thanks. That's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah, I love your logo, by the way. The little devil ass is great.
Thanks.
Where can our listeners track you down if they want to get Scarlet's books, if they want to find your book, if they just want to like creep along on your social media?
Sure. If they want to stalk us on social media, we only have Instagram, so they can follow us on Instagram for social media. We're very private, quiet people, so we just have that. And we have our website, which is scarletimprint.com, where you can find various essays for free in all of our books. And we have all of our talks kind of on YouTube, on our Scarlet Imprint YouTube channel. So if people want to consume stuff that way, they can see me talking there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. It's been great.
No, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, really recommend your book too. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Thanks, buddy.
All right,
Cool.
Peter. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. And that was a chat with Peter Gray. What'd you think?
Oh, it's another one of my favorites. I'm telling you.
Just all your favorites, eh? We should just call the show Graham's Favorites.
Honestly, his book was fantastic. I mean, it really puts a different spin on, not a different spin, but a different take on what happened. Like there's a perception of what happened there with the Babalon working, and he gets right into it. And I love it.
Someone should fictionalize the whole thing and just make it something.
Oh, it's because it's all those sci-fi guys, right? Like when I grew up, like, knowing about Heinlein and
How much of it is already like hidden in the sci-fi, I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Stranger in a Strange Land and all that. I mean, I was kind of more of a sci-fi guy when I was younger, right? Then I kind of went into more fantasy, and then kind of been out of fiction for a while. But it's just interesting that this occult sort of thing overlaps with sci-fi more than people realize. Anyways, it was great.
Yeah. Big thanks to Peter for coming on the show. Of course, those are the guys who put us in touch with Gordon White back in the day, sent us his book Starships. That's how we got to know Gordon, which we have to thank him for that as well. It's turned out to be a good friend along the journey. So yeah, big thanks to Peter. Check out all his stuff. Head over to the publisher there. That's where Gordon publishes his books, a bunch of other fantastic books. Check out Peter's book. Check out our books. Adult Brain.
They do prints and artwork and stuff as well. And,
do they?
Yeah.
We got, I think, 8 or 10 titles out now under Adult Brain Publishing, which is adultbrain.ca. It'll get you to all of those. There's 4 more coming out this week. Secret Doctrine Volume 2 will be coming along pretty quick. Hamlet's Mill coming up in the next couple of weeks. Some great titles coming out. Adultbrain.ca. Use those Audible credits, whatever you want to do there. Check out the books. Adultbrain.ca. GreyAmericaOutlaw.ca if you want to get into our other podcasts, our more hard-hitting stuff, maybe a little more controversial, all that kind of stuff. The show that got kicked off YouTube in under 2 months. But it's still on Rockfin, rockfin.com/GreyAmerica to check out all that stuff. Of course, GreyAmerica.ca/support, guys. If you're getting some value from these shows, from our little podcast here, this will be number 505 or something like that, all for free. No closed back catalog, no affiliates, no ads. You just get it for free. If you're getting some value from all those free shows, head over to GreyAmerica.ca/support today. Make a one-time donation, sign up for a monthly, whatever you can do to start throwing some value back in the pot so we can keep going, keep growing, keep taking over the world, trying to make it a better place. Contact @thecabin.com if you want to get on one of our tours. We just did sell out 2 more of those this weekend. Utah next year sold out. September Scablands tour sold out. So the only event that still has tickets right now is Magic on the Mountain, February 10th to 13th next year. Of course, I will be dropping another Randall event here in the next week or 2 as well.
And our Magic on the Mountain episode would have come out probably the week before this outro.
Right, it's coming out. We're recording the intro for that right away.
Right now. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Who's gonna kill this sacred cow? You were never political anyhow. Since when did you start trusting in the government? Since when was it okay to ridicule and shame your neighbor? Your opinions have become as fickle as artificial flavors. What matters most to you? What the TV host told you to do? Or a moral compass that points true north, oh true. Who's gonna kill this sacred cow? You were never religious anyhow. Since when did you kiss the ring on the hand of the Pope? Since when do we need pharmaceuticals to cope? Your soul has become, ever-loving soul has become as brittle as communion wafers. What matters most to you? What the Holy Ghost told you to do? Or a moral compass that points true north, oh true. I'm gonna kill this sacred cow. Bureaucrats think I'm non-essential anyhow. Since when has our culture become so lowbrow? It's all touchscreens, and nobody has any know-how. Your idea of fun is taking 1,001 photos of your duck face. Matters most to you what the celebrities post told you was cool, or a moral compass that points true north, oh true. I'm gonna kill this sacred cow. I'm gonna kill your 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 sacred cow.